Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and on the day that this video is coming out, it will be Resurrection Sunday, so I hope you all are having a wonderful day celebrating with your family and friends. What a wonderful day it is indeed. And I thought it would be fitting on Resurrection Sunday to do a spring video to talk about all of the new life and wonderful things that happen during the spring season on the homestead. So we're going to do some projects. We're going to talk about cycling through the pantry and how we're kind of reaching the end of the pantry, and some of the food preservation projects and recipes that I'm using just to use up the last odds and ends to clear the way for the new growing season, which is beginning. And then the second half of the video is going to be all about that new growing season and some of the fun projects we did this week to kind of get that going, like planting some fruit trees and getting started some garden seeds out in the garden. So if that's something that interests you, why don't you stick around? But before we get started, I do want to thank the sponsor of our video, which is Backwoods Home Magazine and their sister magazine, Self-Reliance Magazine. I've been working with them since last fall. I love this company and what it stands for. They have a long history, over 30 years of publishing really amazing homesteading content, everything from gardening to canning, great recipes. I love their building tutorials, just anything you can think about with self-reliant homesteading mentality, those kinds of skills, you can learn them in this. I've been a fan of this magazine for about 15 years, and I loved, long before we even moved to this homestead 10 years ago, I was learning how to can and dreaming up how I wanted to set my homestead up based on information in this magazine. So if you would like 50% off of your subscription to either one of the magazines that they offer, or both, check out the link in the video description. It's an amazing deal for such a wonderful publication. Look how thick this is. There's wonderful pictures and tutorials and very limited advertising, which is wonderful. So thank you again to our sponsor. And this is actually the spring issue, which is fitting. I just received it in the mail recently, and really excited for all of the spring content in there. So speaking of spring, let's go ahead and get started with what we were up to on the homestead this week.
You guys watched me over the winter as I cooked meals pretty exclusively from everything that we had stored up during last year's growing season. We prioritized eating from the freezers first because that was what needed to be used up first and would spoil the soonest. Then we moved on to a lot of the canned foods, and we're reaching the point where we are pretty low on frozen foods. There is pretty much nothing left in the freezers, especially after what I did this week. And that's what I'm going to show you in this video. I'm just going to show you how we're eating from the freezers in the pantry this spring. So I did find a pie crust tucked way back in the depths of the freezer that I wanted to use up. And since we have lots of wonderful garlic chives currently growing in the garden, I thought I would make a little quiche from that tiny pie crust that I found that I didn't want to waste. And this is what breakfast looked like recently. We have tons of eggs in abundance because the chickens and the ducks are both right at the peak of their egg production. I love adding garlic chives to our eggs. And the pie crust was just a wonderful surprise on this day. Typically, I would make some kind of egg bake without it. But this is what breakfasts look like this time of year. Lots of eggs, lots of greens. Once our spring greens will become available, we'll just saute those up into the eggs. And then we're having some oatmeal with some frozen blueberries, because blueberries are one of the main things we have left in the freezer. It's just berries. And then I found these last 2 bags of tomatoes. Honestly, most years I should use the frozen tomatoes up by December. I like to do it as close to harvest as possible because they do lose nutrients the longer that they're in the freezer. But this year I happened to have a baby through the winter and then had a newborn. And so I just had these 2 gallons of Roma tomatoes here that were waiting for me to find the perfect project for them. And when they're frozen, all you have to do is run them under warm water and those peels slip right off. It is so convenient and so easy to do canning projects with frozen tomatoes like this. So something that I have been wanting to do is can up some pizza sauce. In the summer, we have a green egg grill that we like to use pretty much every day for dinner. And that green egg grill can turn into a pizza oven. So I plan to make a lot more pizzas this summer than I did last summer. And it would be really nice to have some shelf staple pre-made pizza sauce just ready to go. So I'm filling up my pot here with all of those frozen tomatoes, and let's go ahead and turn them into some sauce. I'm going to start by adding a little water to the bottom of the pot so they don't scorch until they start releasing some of their juices. And then it's going to be a little watery as they do begin to melt, and that's okay. We're just going to cook them down and let some of that water evaporate. I'm going to use my immersion blender to blend all of the tomatoes together. I'm not worried about removing the seeds. Some people think they leave a bitter taste to your tomato products. We don't really notice that much of a difference, so it's not worth the work to filter out those seeds. Now to my pot, I'm going to add some onions. You can see our onions are just starting to sprout. We have half a bag left, and we made it through the majority of the winter months there and spring months with fresh onions. So I'm really happy about our onion storage this year. Let's pray that this year's onion harvest is as good as last year's. I also added about 4 cloves of garlic. So it was 2 onions and 4 cloves of garlic. And to that, I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of salt. Then we're going to sprinkle in oregano and basil. I just kind of measure with my heart on this. When you're canning, it isn't going to affect the safety of the recipe to add a little more or a little less herbs. So definitely just season those to taste however you would like it. This is what it looks like as it's simmering and thickening up on the stove. And then once again, I'm going to use my trusty immersion blender. You guys know this is one of my absolute favorite kitchen tools. And I will link one in the video description for you. I love my cordless immersion blender. It's so handy to be able to take it all around the kitchen without it being plugged into the wall. And so we're just going to make sure all of those onions and the garlic chunks were thoroughly blended into the sauce before we begin filling our jars. I am using pint-sized jars because 1 pint jar will make us about 2 large pizzas, and that's typically what we'll make for a lunch for the children. If it were a dinner and everyone was eating, we might go through another extra half pint, and thankfully last summer I had canned pizza sauce into half pints, so I have some of those down there that I could add to these to make a full meal if I needed to. So when you're canning, you always want to think about how you're going to use it and can it in the sizes that you'll use up in a meal so you don't end up with a million opened jars of food in your fridge. So that 2 gallons of tomatoes only made me these 5 pints because I had taken out some of the tomato sauce the night before to use in a crock pot lasagna. So I just canned up what was left after that meal. Now I am going to add about 1/4 a teaspoon of citric acid to each of these jars. That will ensure that these are acidic enough for us to safely water bath can them. If we didn't add the citric acid, I would need to pressure can these. And then we want to wipe the rims of our jars here just to make sure they're thoroughly clean and will give us a good seal with our lids. Speaking of lids, I just got my new order of narrow mouth lids. I was out of them and I was grateful that they actually came just in time for this project. If you need some canning lids, check out the link in the video description and you can get 10% off yours using my discount code. These are my favorite lids. I never have seal failures with these. And then we're going to get our rings here on top of the jars and get these all ready for the water bath. Because they're pints, they're going to process for 35 minutes. And that 35 minutes counts once the water comes to a rolling boil. And then after they're done, we have 5 meals worth of wonderful pizza sauce. And as I mentioned, it is about pizza season. I can't wait to use the grill to make some wonderful pizzas with all of the fresh garden veggies that are going to be coming out of the garden this summer. Oh, I cannot wait. So I've got my little helper here, getting these all ready for storage. We just need to get them labeled so we know what type of sauce this is, and then we can add them down to the pantry shelves, which are getting pretty sparse. There is not a ton left. We do have enough to get us through to the summer before we start replenishing, but it's pretty slim pickings there down there. A lot of our favorites are meals in jars, and the favorite fruits and veggies are gone, and now we're eating some of the runners up, but that's okay. We are still happy to eat from there. So this is that green egg grill that we have that I mentioned. We have been, whenever the weather is nice, which isn't every day lately, it's still rather cold, but maybe once a week we'll get a beautiful day with clear skies and I will want to grill a meal. And so I'm grateful to have canned potatoes down in the pantry. This is something that I love for the summer, and I'm going to show you my favorite way to use these when we're grilling food. So I can them like this and drain out all of that starchy extra water, and then I can slice these up for potato salad. Now, when I can my potatoes, they don't turn to mush. They're still somewhat firm but soft enough that you can bite into them easily, and that's the texture of potato we like for potato salad. We are going to chop up some onion and some celery and add that to those diced potatoes. If you wanted a softer texture of a potato, you might want to cook these potatoes for a little longer through the canning process. Maybe add, an extra 5 to 10 minutes to your canning time so they soften up more. But now we want to make a sauce. I added an egg, a little bit of olive oil, some apple cider vinegar that was homemade. We added yellow mustard. I'm going to add paprika, and we're going to do salt and pepper, a little bit of celery salt with that. And then I'm going to use my immersion blender and blend it together. We're not making a mayonnaise that's going to be super thick because we added a lot of that vinegar for the vinegar taste. This is going to be more of like a dressing that is going to be runny. And I'm going to pour that over the top of our potatoes and onions and celery. At this point, I would usually add some sweet relish. I forgot to film that this time, but we did add some chopped egg to help thicken it up. And then over the top of this, we're going to add a little bit of paprika and dill. And this is how I make my potato salad. And later on in the summer, we'll have fresh dill, which is really lovely, but for now, we're using the freeze-dried dill. And this is just a really easy side dish, a great way to use up all of the canned potatoes that we have in the pantry, because that's my last potatoes to use up. I had frozen diced potatoes, and I had frozen some French fries to use through the winter. And we had fresh potatoes in storage. And once all of those were used up, we are now left with canned potatoes. And thankfully, they're really delicious. Another way I love to use canned potatoes is just to fry them up in the morning with eggs to make like a hash or something like that for breakfast. It's so convenient to have those pre-cooked potatoes to make really easy meals. So this is what dinners tend to look like. Specifically on the weekends, we'll do a larger dinner like this. If the weather is nice and we're grilling out, lots of eggs right now, deviled eggs, asparagus is in season, of course lemonade that we made from all of that lemon juice that we froze over the winter when we got our bulk citrus. I just love the sunshine. I'm looking forward to a summer of grilling out and eating wonderfully a lot of our homegrown beef and chicken on the grill. So we're not just using up the last of the pantry, we're now thinking about what we're going to do this year and in future years to continue to fill the pantry. And one of our main goals is to really expand our orchard. We have pear trees, a cherry tree, we have lots of apple trees, and every year we're adding more to that. We did pomegranate last year, and this year we're adding more peach and apple trees. Adam is kind of become addicted to buying fruit trees. If he sees them on sale somewhere for a good price, he'll bring them home and just throw them in the ground. And then I will go through and fertilize them. I've been using a fruit booster. I will link what I used in the video description if that's something you're interested in. And we're just trying to get those in the ground. We were actually pretty delayed in getting them in the ground this year. These had been sitting outside for about 3 weeks, and it's because we had really stormy weather and a lot of rain with flood warnings and watches in our area, and the ground was just waterlogged and way too wet to get these fruit trees in the ground. And thankfully, last weekend, the weather was beautiful and the ground had started to dry out, so we could finally plant these trees. And that's a huge goal for filling the pantry because we do have to rely on bulk fruit orders. Typically from the Amish is where we get our bulk fruit in order to can it. And so it'll be so lovely. I think this year will probably be the first year we'll have a significant enough apple harvest from some of our older trees to maybe not have to purchase apples, at least in the quantities that we've had to in previous years. And we're looking forward to the years that we don't have to buy any bulk fruit. We're always trying to increase our self-sufficiency. Besides fruit trees, we're beginning the work on cleaning up the homestead from the long winter. There are repairs that need to be done on some chicken coops and fencing and all sorts of things. Adam has a really long honey-do list this time of year. My job, on the other hand, is to just prepare for this year's gardening season. So we are up potting different seedlings that have sprouted in the house and working on getting the garden in order, and it is quite a task. I showed you several videos ago the state of the garden and how in my third trimester of pregnancy last fall, I just decided to leave it and deal with it this spring. And we're slowly digging ourselves out of the hole we got ourselves into with the garden mess. And I'm just taking it one bed at a time and planting a bed as I get it cleaned up and fertilized. And slowly but surely, we're going to get it looking beautiful. And I'm just hoping for a really productive year in the garden so that we can fill the freezers in the pantry with all of this delicious homegrown food that my family loves so much. So this week, I was actually able to get out in the garden one day. It's been very difficult to do so with Abby. She's at a very wakeful stage where she's not as content just sitting in her little bouncy seat and watching me work anymore. So if I'm going to get work done, she has to be in the carrier on me if children aren't available to help me babysit her. So I'm slowly but surely working in the garden with her attached to my front or my back. We were able to get one bed of carrots planted on this beautiful day. And hey, it's one more bed. So far we've got lettuce growing, we've got radishes. These carrots are going now. We've gotten our onions in there. The garlic that we planted last fall is growing. There's 4 beds of that. And now I'm going to start working on potatoes. That is this week's goal. So Lord willing, it's going to be a wonderful year in the garden, and we're going to have wonderful harvests to fill the pantry. As I mentioned, Abby is getting much more wakeful, and that just feels appropriate for springtime. It's like she's starting to come alive. She's not just this little newborn that lays there anymore. She's now able to interact and play with us, and she's working on rolling over, and it's such a beautiful time. I really feel like I have come out of that last 4th trimester. They call it that postpartum period where you're in kind of a newborn haze and still recovering from the birth. And I feel like we're creating new rhythms and routines and loving life as a family of 11 now. And it's just so appropriate for this time of year to just come alive with this new life and this new family rhythm. It's a really beautiful thing. So that is what we're doing right now. We're just enjoying the outdoors, getting the homestead back in order, and trying to balance our time playing together as a family with our productive time working together as a family.
Okay, friends, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that little peek into everything that was happening on the homestead. All of the fun ways that spring is very apparent. Things are starting to come to life. I saw the dogwood is blooming outside. We have little bits of green popping up everywhere. The maple trees are budding. The apple trees are about to bloom. It's just such an exciting time of year. And what a beautiful reminder it is when we look around nature, we can see the new life coming. And on a day like today, which is Resurrection Sunday, it's just a beautiful reminder of new life and the opportunity for new life that we have in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I hope you're having a wonderful day celebrating Him and the gift, the greatest gift we received in the grace that He offers. That's it for this week. We will be back next week with another video of all the things that are happening here on the homestead. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking and subscribing and engaging with our videos. It truly is a blessing to our family, and we are very grateful for you. All right, guys. Bye.